Okay, welcome to week one of the Launch Your Mini podcast cohort. Cohort one. I plan on running this a couple of times, so feedback will be appreciated. Today, we're going to be talking about defining your mission statement, why it's important, and then we'll go through an exercise where we actually define it. And we'll look at a few examples and things like that. And then at the end, we'll look at kind of one live use case where we workshop that mission statement. So first, I want to tell you a quick story about the number of downloads I had when I sold my first podcast sponsorship, and that was 0. Spoiler alert on the slide here. I had 0 downloads when I sold my first podcast sponsorship, and I know what you are thinking. Yeah, right. That there's no way that's true. I thought that was just like marketing mumbo jumbo that you wrote on Podcast Liftoff or that you tell people, but it's absolutely true. And so I want to tell you how that came about. Some might say I got lucky, and that's definitely not the case. Maybe I got a little bit lucky in the sense that an email landed in my inbox at the right time, but as a freelancer, right, some of you watching this will know that I come from the WordPress space, and I had done WordPress development for 20 years, basically, before switching over to, I've done web development. I don't think WordPress is 20 yet. Yeah, it's 20 next year. So I've done web development for 20 years. And as a freelancer, I learned to ask for what I wanted and needed. And this is really important. A lot of people are afraid to ask brands, companies, whoever for money, and you need to be able to do that if you're going to get sponsors. But here's how it worked. I got an email about a link back on my blog, casabona.org. They said, hey, I see that you write about WordPress a lot. You are a respected voice in the WordPress space. I'm launching a new guide on how to launch a WordPress website. I would love a link back to that piece. I responded that I don't do link backs, and I didn't, and I still don't. But I mentioned that I was launching a new podcast with the same audience. And this was kind of glib. Like, I was kind of doing this like, okay, buddy, like everybody asks me for a backlink. What makes you special? So I said for $99, I'll mention you on the show. I will link on the new website. I'll include a logo, and as a sign of good faith and goodwill, I'll also add the link back on casabona.org. And to my surprise, he said yes. So I sold my first sponsorship. They sponsored episode 1. You can double check this over at howibuiltit/001. They're still on the site because that's my promise to my sponsors is they'll get their link and logo on the episode page as long as the site exists. So it totally worked for How I Built It. But I had a short-lived first podcast. This is the incredible artwork I made for it using like whatever. This was like pre-Canva days, so whatever I used for this. It was probably Photoshop. That tactic would not have worked for my first show, TIL podcast. TIL stands for Today I Learned. It was like, I guess around like 2011, 2012, it was a lot of people were saying it. And the way that format worked, it was unfocused, unpredictable, and poorly moderated. The way the show worked was that my friends and I were having like these barroom discussions. It started because I made a stupid comment. I said, please don't judge me for this. I said, why do you need to rotate your tires when you drive? They rotate anyway. And my friends are like, Joe, you're an idiot. Rotating your tires means like physically moving them to different parts of the car. And then I realized I had a giant gap in my knowledge for a lot of common sense, something a lot of people told me when I was in my early 20s. And I said, why don't we start a podcast, like 4 or 5 of us, where we just talk about things that maybe we should know. And so we didn't have a focus. It was unpredictable in the fact that we didn't research any topics. We just kind of got together on Skype and talked about something that we thought was interesting that day. And it was poorly moderated. It was a panel show, and I was supposed to be the moderator, and I'm a terrible moderator, and I wanted to talk too. So it didn't work. So if I had reached out to that person and said, hey, why don't you sponsor this totally random podcast? He'd probably say no. The reason that it worked for How I Built It is because I had a niche podcast. And your podcast should have that too. It should be clear. It should have a niche audience. It should help listeners solve a problem. And then this will help brands or whoever, right? Potential customers. This is not just about sponsorships. It'll help people understand if the problem you're solving aligns with the problem they're trying to have solved. So this is why the cold sponsor pitch worked for How I Built It versus TIL. I had a clear audience, WordPress freelancers. The problem was how to start a WordPress-based business. That was the mission statement of the How I Built It podcast. I wanted to help WordPress freelancers start an actual business and not just like feel their way through word of mouth referrals for websites. TIL podcast, there was no clear audience. There was no clear topics. That we weren't solving a problem. We were just talking about stuff. Stuff you should know, which was probably the inspiration for TIL podcast, was a lot better, right? That was focused and informational and had a format, right? And was a lot bigger even back then than TIL ever grew to be. So this is what brings me to the mission statement. The mission statement is what helps you focus your podcast. It's your guide. The mission statement defines everything about your show. It'll be the guiding light behind your content and calls to action, and it'll give your podcast direction, much like Spider-Man is giving this lady directions in this GIF. I grew up on Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. And I think Tom Holland's Spider-Man is like far and away the best one. So that's where I pull my gifts from. But your mission statement's your guide, right? And again, my mission statement for How I Built It at first was I help WordPress freelancers become a real WordPress business by interviewing successful WordPress business owners on how they built their business or their product. There was no such thing for TIL podcast. So here are the benefits of having a good mission statement. And this is why I spend so much time on this at the beginning. It's essentially like building a good foundation for a house, right? Lots of people want to focus on the gear. What mic should I buy? What host should I have? Who's going to be my first guest? And you can make it look fancy and give it great artwork and buy a super expensive microphone. But just like a house could look really nice on the outside, but if it's built on a foundation of toothpicks, it's going to crumble really quickly. The mission statement is the foundation. So with a good mission statement, your audience is clear. Your content ideas fall into place. If you know who you're serving and the problem you're solving, then it's easy for you to be like, should I do an episode on X? Yes or no? You'll also have a plan for making money based on who you help and who you serve and the tools that you want to give them to help them solve their problems. And your call to action becomes more obvious because, again, for a mini podcast, right, you probably want to build your list. But with a good mission statement, you'll know this for sure. So I can't stress enough how important a mission statement is. And I'll just say one more thing. When I had How I Built It, its mission changed a couple times. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the good mission statement really helps me when I get cold pitched on guests. In the beginning, right, because How I Built It's an interview show. Make Money Podcasting is not. That's just me. That's my mini podcast. But How I Built It is an interview show. And for a long time, if somebody was just like, I want to come on your podcast, I'd be like, great, that's content. It's cool. That's one less person I had to pitch. Now I'm a lot more selective. I get pitched a lot more. But I mean, if 10 people pitch me in a week, theoretically that's like half of a season that I don't have to find guests. But I'm a lot more selective now because they reach out based on their pitch. I usually make them fill out a form, which I guess I'll share in the playbook. This form that I make people fill out. And one question is, why do you think you'd be a good guest? And if they just say like, oh, I'm a really good business person, like that, well, that's not. Or if they say like, we're big in technology, that's the old mission statement. The new mission statement helps me winnow the field of potential guests, because my current mission statement, free coaching calls from successful creators, if they're not a successful creator, they're out, right? They're not they're or if they can't help people be a successful creator, I guess, then they don't fall in line with the mission. So mission statement, clear audience, content ideas, plan for making money, clear call to action. So this is the framework I use for defining a mission statement. And you'll see with the examples that we look at, it's a little bit a little bit looser than this, but this is the format. My podcast helps audience solve problem by, and then defining a goal for each episode. So my podcast helps audience solve problem by goal of each episode. This does three things. It defines who your listeners are. All right. My podcast helps creators. It defines what problems they have. My podcast helps creators solve the problem of making money with their content. And then it defines how you can help them solve that problem. My podcast helps creators solve the problem of making money with their content by giving them free coaching calls from people who are already doing it. That's my mission statement, and that is my guiding light for how I built it. So let's look at a couple of good ones. Again, we just went over this one. It's like free coaching calls from successful creators. This is what I'm providing. I'm helping creators and podcasters, and to some extent, small business owners who need to be better at creating content, make money with their content, either directly or indirectly, by showing them how other creators do it. I think that's really important. And I'll just say here, right, like I use how I built it to establish my own authority as well. When I have somebody on the call, it is more of a conversation. They're not coaching me, we're coaching the listener. But it's like a tag team effect. So that's not really the mini podcast thing. That's just something to consider. Here's the second one. This is my mini podcast. This is old artwork. I don't know why it's like that. I need to update that. But the mission statement for this is helping podcasters make money with their podcast by teaching them expert tested systems for growth and monetization. So again, mission statement in my framework format. My podcast helps podcasters solve the problem of making money with their podcast by teaching them expert tested systems for growth and monetization. It's a mouthful. It's not great copy. The copy is different, right? The copy for this site is like, I'm going to help you make your first $10,000 by telling you everything that I've learned making $250,000. But that's my mission statement. So when I sit down to make an episode, the gift guide episode notwithstanding, which by the way, the gift guide episode of that podcast, not performing as well as I thought it would. And it's because I got away from the mission a little bit. I thought it would be fun, but the show is not old enough for me to get away from the mission like that. It would have done better on how I built it, I think. So let's look at two more. One is Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn. It says weekly interviews, strategy, and advice for building your online business the smart way. So if we were to ascribe a mission statement, he helps online business owners, that's the audience, grow their business, that's the problem, by teaching them strategy and giving advice. And Pat Flynn can do this, right? Because he's been doing it successfully for like 15 years. So he helps online business owners grow their business by teaching them strategy and giving advice. That's the mission of Smart Passive Income, and he's he really stays to, and these are my words, not his, but if you listen to the show, it's he stays true to that mission most of the time. And the last example I want to give is the Brand New Business podcast. This is by Trudy Avery. I was recently a guest on this show. And it says, because people like us have no idea what we're capable of. That's the tagline. The mission is she helps hopeful entrepreneurs gain confidence to, and here's the problem, launch their business, right? They don't have that confidence to launch their business by telling founder stories. So each episode, she tells a story of somebody who started their business and what they were nervous about and how they finally got over the hump. And then they bring it back to, hey, if you haven't started your business yet, listen to this story. Because if they could do it, you could do it. And so for me, it was like my wife was on maternity leave and like unpaid maternity leave, and we had a 3-month-old at the house, and I left the basically one of two like big person full-time jobs that I had in a span of like 6 years, and I left and I started my own business with an actual family with real stakes for the first time in my life, and it worked out. We're like 6 years later. It worked out. So that's what her mission is. And I think she does that really well. Okay, so now we've spent about 20 minutes talking about the problem. I say we'll take 20 minutes to define the mission statement here if you're watching. So pause this video, and then we'll go through some feedback, and then we will close out this session. And if you have any questions, you can leave them in the chat or leave comments via the playbook or anything like that. So that's where we'll pause this session, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so after that quick break, we are going to do a little use case study here with Tom. He is here live with us. So Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about, actually, I'm going to do this. Yeah. Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about the idea you have for your podcast and then your mission statement, and we can kind of workshop that.
Sure. What I'd like to do is help people with cybersecurity, not necessarily, large businesses or even medium-sized businesses or anything like that, but, smaller 1, 2, 3 people companies or, freelancers, people like that. And I want to help them with, the overwhelming things of knowing what all to do with your passwords and your backups and two-factor authentication, updates, all these various things that are overwhelming if you don't know a lot about them, but they can still easily be done and protect you very, very well from the things that are out there. So that's what I want to do with this podcast. So when I was working through my mission statement, I'd like the audience to be creators. That encompasses a lot of small companies in the online space. I could call it solopreneurs or even online businesses, but if I was to choose online businesses, well, those can be quite large as well. So I was really trying to narrow it down to a specific audience by just using creators. And it would solve the problem of securing their online businesses or securing themselves online, something along those lines. And then doing that by giving them actionable tips each week to educate them and improve their cybersecurity. So it would be, again, a mini podcast, short to the point. Each week would be something different. It could be generically about passwords, or it could be, hey, this is a password manager that you should try, or this is an alternative password manager that you can try, or this is something that's just released that you should give it a try. So those are the type of things that I want to kind of reach out to in the weekly episodes.
Nice. I like that. It's I think it's really focused, right? The audience. I think you're right saying that like if you make your target online businesses like that, they could get really big. And so then you're trying to talk to singular people as well as possibly teams. And it sounds like you want to talk to an individual, right? And so saying creator, I think is probably today the best way to do that, right? Like maybe 5 years ago it would have been like freelancer.
Hmm.
That like kind of implies individuality. But I think creator is a really good route to go because they're online all the time, and this actionable advice could be really good for them. So, creators securing their online business or themselves, um, I think I would try to pick one of those at least to start, um,
Hmm.
and then maybe based on feedback. This is something I didn't mention during like the slides portion, but your mission statement can change, and maybe that was implied, right? Because the how I built it mission changed a couple of times over the seven years it's been a show. Um, and so if you look at securing themselves and you start to get feedback that's like, hey, yeah, but like what about like how I run my business, or um you can always switch that, or you can always just keep it as themselves and include that kind of business, like how do you safely accept payments online. You're
Hmm.
securing yourself as well as your business, right? What is PCI compliance, right? You're securing yourself as well as your business. um Anybody who's listening to this later, find somebody like find a payment processor. PCI compliance is a nightmare. um and then actionable tips to educate and improve cybersecurity. I like that a lot, right? Because we're probably in a situation where um, it's hard for me to think of creators as non-technical, but a lot of creators are non-technical. Um, and it just so happens that like I'm in the technical creator space, and I'm trying to move out of that. But this could be a lot of things from if you use WordPress, keeping your WordPress site up to date, um, not sharing or how to not sharing your password with a VA, or how to safely share a password with a VA. Um, and like what you should do in that situation, right? Because I'm sure a lot of creators, um, this is in the paid community, right? So, for example, like my VA has my Descript account, so that I don't have to pay for a team member to essentially make audiograms. Um, so what would one do in that situation? How much do you need to trust the person and things like that? um,
Hmm.
so I think this is a really solid mission. um, your podcast helps creators solve the problem of securing themselves by giving them actionable tips to educate and improve cybersecurity. um, Again, securing online business or themselves, I would still try to pick one or the other. Um, and then as far as the next steps for this, right? I didn't share this slide yet, but the next steps are going to be to use your mission statement to come up with some content, because next week we're going to actually create a couple of outlines and then record an episode, um, like separate, like not all together. It'll be separate, but um, I'm curious. With this mission statement, do you have content? It sounds like you do. Um, Content in mind already that you think would be good to share with us, with your audience, on your podcast.
Yeah, I believe to start with, the first handful of episodes will just cover the basics, about passwords. Why do you need a strong password? Why do you need to have, special characters or numbers in the password, the complexity of the password? go into using, why are password managers easier than trying to remember your passwords? Why do you need unique passwords for sites? And then another episode, or that could possibly even span a couple episodes, but then I could have one on backups and one on endpoint protection, one on updating and patching, like you mentioned with the WordPress site, or just your routers, your mobile devices, your computers, all those things. So I do have, the idea for at least the first handful of episodes would be very general and basic. And then as the podcast, had more episodes, I would get into, an episode that was specifically on using Dashlane or Bitwarden or LastPass, to go through, the reasons why I do or don't like those software services, uh, and get into more detail um, as it went along.
Yeah, I think that sounds really great. I would ask this one question here. Do you think an episode on why this show or why cybersecurity is important? I guess the general question is, do you think you'll need to convince your audience that this is important?
Well, I guess that's the main problem with, doing something like, cybersecurity. Um, People that want to start a podcast already know they want to start a podcast. Everyone needs to, be diligent with their cybersecurity, but they don't all know that.
Right.
So I'm hoping that I will do an initial episode or even two to kind of dive into, you know, why it's important and why, how things can go poorly for you if you don't do these things. And hopefully those will be like the base episodes, I can keep referring people back to, um, in future episodes, and say, hey, if you need to know why this is important, go back to episode X and do this, and hopefully that um, will be a good starting.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I asked that because I think it would be a good idea, right? Always it's hard, right? Because this feels a little bit more like a vitamin. Um, but it's like a a painkiller disguised as a vitamin, right? Because you're in the cybersecurity space. I was in the freelance WordPress space for a while. I would try to sell people on their updates and backup packages before anything happened, and like 90% of my clients would buy it after something happened. Um, like people don't realize they need cybersecurity until they need cybersecurity. Um, but yeah, I think that like having an episode or two about why it's important, and like telling a couple of horror stories um, would be a really good way to drive that home, right? Like this, people think that you need to be big to secure your website, but in actuality, 80% of hacked websites are, less than 10,000 visits a month or whatever that stat is. Um, So I think that would be good, and that could serve as your trailer. It could serve as like a teaser YouTube video if you have a presence there, to get people to subscribe to your podcast. But I just want to kind of break down what we talked about here. So I think Tom did a good job. First of all, he's using his expertise. He's been in the cybersecurity space for 20 years ish, and so that's a really important thing to consider. Um, Especially when you're starting a mini podcast, you want if it's going to rely on you, then it should be a topic that you know intimately. Um, and then so choosing the audience of creators again, I think is smart, right? Because the creator space is a growing space. It's a relatively new space, and um, so it could benefit from some of the things that, for example, people in the WordPress space didn't really know when WordPress first started. The last thing I want to cover with you here is we have a good mission statement, so we know who we're serving. We have some ideas for content already. Um, And so let's talk about the making money aspect of it, right? Again, this is a drum I beat a lot. Um, a lot of podcast consultants will tell you to not even think about making money with your podcast at first. I think that it's one of the most important things that you should think about before launching your podcast. I would say don't worry about making money at first, but definitely think about how you're going to make money. And so, with your mission statement and who you're serving, do you have some thoughts on how this podcast could make money 3, 6, 9 months down the line?
Yeah, the intent is to collect emails and uh, then eventually do some one-on-one coaching, and that's the initial plan. It could even be, small group coaching, something like that, to help people with it. Because even if you know how to do something, actually doing it, you could use a little handholding for that. So, some type of coaching is what I was hoping to get out of it. But if I was going to try and find sponsors, I feel like I could reach out to um, a security awareness training company
Mm-hmm.
and get them to sponsor an episode. There are several of those that I like especially well. Um, again, back to any of the products that I would be telling people about, whether it's a backup service or, a password manager, antivirus or endpoint protection. Any of those I can see it would be a good sponsor, whether it be for an episode or for a few episodes. Um, to do something like that instead of using affiliate links and things like that, because probably will have low download numbers for quite some time.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. And something that comes to mind immediately for me is VPN software and services. Right? They seem to be sponsoring, especially YouTubers, of all kind of walks of life lately. So like NordVPN is one I've been seeing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
ExpressVPN, they previously sponsored my podcast though. Frankly, I think their terms are uh, creator hostile, um, or podcaster hostile at least. But VPN is definitely like someone who's like VPN software. They've proven that they do sponsor creators and podcasters, and so that might be a good opportunity, um, to put that in front of your audience and the importance of a VPN, right? Because again, like ExpressVPN's ad read is like, I just watched Doctor Who in the United States, even though you can only watch it in the UK. And I'm like, I think that violates like streaming terms of services. And that's like not something I'm really comfortable promoting. Um, but like they give you the whole script. Anyway, so I think that's really good. And then your call to action, it sounds like if your intent is to collect emails, your call to action is join my mailing list. Um, you might even want to do like a content upgrade there. So like maybe like the top 10 most common passwords or most cracked passwords, and then like how to come up with a good password as like a PDF or something like that.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah, so I think that you're good and on the right path there. So thanks, Tom, for sharing. I appreciate you kind of putting this out there and letting me workshop it with you for everybody in the playbook.
I appreciate the help. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So let me. Oh, I got universal control on the wrong computer. Okay. So let me get back to closing this out for the recording. These slides and everything will be available. You'll get an email about this. And if you're watching this, you've already gotten that email. So next steps, once you define your mission statement. And again, for anybody watching the recording, comment on this video, below this video with your mission statement. Share it. I'll be participating and offering feedback there for the next week until we get to the second week for the cohort. But once you have your mission statement, use it to come up with content. I think you should come up with 15 to 20 topics that align with your mission. That gives you a little bit of wiggle room, right? Because ultimately, I think if you're going to do a weekly podcast, you should have 10 or 12 episodes ready to go before you launch. So you have 3 months worth of content. And then think about how you can expand your mission into a trailer. So, like I was talking about with Tom, um, you want to make sure that you hook your listeners and tell them why they should listen. Your mission statement tells you who you're serving and the problem you're solving. Your trailer should communicate that in some way. So with Tom, it could be telling a couple of horror stories about creators who did not have proper security, and maybe their YouTube channel got locked and then demonetized, which is like super scary for a creator, and you don't want to do that. For me, with Make Money Podcasting, it was about the trailer is about how I made money from day one with podcasting with 0 downloads. So those sort of things, you want to move that into your trailer. And then next week we'll create a couple of episode outlines, and then we'll actually record one. So this is going to be me being available to you while you record your episode. And then we could talk about afterwards, like kind of how you felt recording that episode. I can offer some live feedback if you want to share the recording with me. And so we'll see how that goes. I'm pretty excited. But for now, the time being, there is a Q&A time. Again, if you're watching the replay, post your questions in the comments below this video, and I will answer them probably with a video, like a zip message video that I'll send you. So thanks so much for watching this. And Tom, thank you for sharing your thoughts.